Hi, my name is Phil Seaver. I am a principal partner at Seaver Story, eminent domain law firm for landowners. I'm here with our intern, Ben Wallace, to do another video where we help educate Ben and you on some issues of eminent domain. And today, a little bit of a more philosophical discussion, and I hope to get Ben to actually engage here a little bit on this one, and because he's learned some things, and see what his opinions are. So Ben, what is our topic today?
Is eminent domain bad or good?
Yeah, so I'll answer, and I'm going to ask Ben a question. I think it's both bad and good. I think that if utilized correctly, well, let's back up. Like, we need to be able to have the state build roads. We need to have the states be able to put in parks and public spaces. The state needs to be able to do things to make sure we have a functioning society, right? And could you imagine if in Atlanta, as an example, the state wasn't allowed to build new roads? Well, then you wouldn't have Atlanta. Like, Atlanta requires new roads because it's growing so fast. They have to take to build roads. You wouldn't have a city, you wouldn't have a society. It wouldn't function without eminent domain. Our society wouldn't function without eminent domain. We wouldn't have airports. We wouldn't have railroads. We wouldn't have transportation if everything was privatized. So it serves a really important function, eminent domain does. I mean, we would have parks, right? National parks. We wouldn't have, I mean, there's so much stuff. I think, though, there's some bad associated with it, too. I think that it can be abused. I think that I have seen personally eminent domain used as and abused to force landowners into accepting bad deals for their land. Here in Indiana, I have seen the city of Carmel used eminent domain to try to force a client to do and make concessions that they were not obligated to make. And I've seen it in many jurisdictions where eminent domain was used as a cudgel, as opposed to being used properly, in my opinion. Pipelines, power lines continually argue. I mean, imagine a world where the power line had to go to a farmer and say, I want to put this huge tower in the middle of your farm field. How much the power line company would have to pay for that if they did not have the power of eminent domain. But instead, the power line comes in and says, well, I've got eminent domain. I'm going to pay you pennies on the dollar for that. So I see it abused in a lot of different instances. Probably the biggest problem with eminent domain right now is business losses. Some states have said that business losses are a thing that you can be compensated for. Georgia's a really good example. Virginia's another good example. In Indiana, and probably most of the states, I'd say the vast majority, 40 of the 50, 45 of the 50 states, business losses aren't allowed in eminent domain. So I have personally represented clients who have had their businesses, their property taken where their business was. They've been forced to relocate, and that relocation has put them out of business. And they've either been out of business for so long while they performed the relocation and the taking that their business failed, or they moved to a new location and their business was so location dependent that the new location failed. And there is no compensation for business losses in so many states. And I think that is absolutely unfair to the landowner. The argument against it by the states is that, oh, it could just create this whole big new pot of money we'd have to come up with to build our projects. And my answer is, so what? So what? You ruin somebody's life, you take away their livelihood, and you just get to shrug your shoulders and say, it's all right. It just makes me mad. I think it's a real big abuse. It's a real big problem in eminent domain right now. And if I could just wave a magic wand and change something about the law, I would include business losses for landowners that are eligible for them. So some good, some bad. Ben, I don't know. You've been with us now for a month or so. You've done some of these videos. You've seen us operate. What's your kind of impression so far? Eminent domain, good or bad?
Yeah, I see the argument for both sides. I mean, I see the good. It is needed, like to build pipelines and stuff. With the new carbon capture thing that I've been researching. I mean, I see why people don't want it, but I also see the reason that we might need it for the future. So I can see both sides of the argument.
Yeah, it's really, I think eminent domain, it helps make helps make our society work. I just don't like the way it's applied sometimes. I don't like when it's used as almost for blackmail. And I don't like when it's used. I don't like when these businesses suffer and are forced to close, and there's nothing for them at the end of the day. So, hey, any questions you have after my comments?
Yeah. So, say someone like might not be able to hire an attorney. Like, how could like eminent domain abuse affect them?
Well, I think that. Look, I've represented several thousand clients, right? In every case, we got more money for those clients. Every case. And so just think about that for a second. Like if they didn't hire me, they didn't get paid what they should have got paid. Right? And we've had clients that have, we just did a bunch of trials. Like our clients were offered 300,000, they got 3 million, 200,000, they got 2.4 million. 80,000, they got 2.5 million. I mean, so those are just 3 cases recently. In each of those cases, if they hadn't hired a competent attorney, they would have left millions of dollars on the table. They were being cheated out of millions of dollars. Think about that for a second. So the question is, will somebody without an attorney be abused further? The answer is absolutely yes. Because the state's not out there to give you the right compensation. I think we've proved that in court and at mediations and with all the representation we've done. So you got to go up there and fight if you don't want to be abused, right? You still might be abused. Like no guarantee we're going to get exactly what you need or the 100% of what we think you're entitled to. But I mean, you got a better shot hiring somebody and having them help you. Because without it, you're going to be in a tough spot. All right. Hey, any last questions, Ben?
That's all I got.
All right, great. I mean, really interesting kind of philosophical discussion. I got up on my soapbox for a second on eminent domain and business losses. But thanks for joining us. My name, again, is Phil Seaver. I'm one of the principal partners here at Seaver Story with Ben Wallace, our intern. And if you have any questions about eminent domain, especially if you ever want to get together and talk about business losses, and if you're a person in a position of influence in state legislatures, want to talk about my opinion on business losses and why I see that they're necessary, I'm happy to talk about those issues and would love to talk about them to somebody in power. Regardless, though, please feel free to reach out. I'm happy to answer any questions about eminent domain that you might have. You'll see some contact information after the video is over. And thanks for joining us today.